Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. We talk a lot about telling our stories, but what about the people who decide which stories get told? My next guest is the CEO of Soul Scribe Publishing, and she's also AUDHD. Today we're diving into what it means to lead, create, and amplify voices when your brain doesn't follow the traditional rule book. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and I'll see you on the other side, everybody. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. Today I'm joined with Christy Lee Rackham. Welcome to the show, Christy.
Thank you, Reed. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now the problem, as I always like to do, I always like to ask my guests, tell me about yourself before we get going.
So much to tell. Well, since we're on a neurodivergent podcast, I will start with I am autistic ADHD. I'm 52 years old, and I also have autistic teenagers who are also ADHD. They're 16 and 18. So primarily, I am a proud mum of some amazing, creative, out-of-the-box teenagers. And I'm also a boutique publisher. I have a publishing house called Soul Scribe Publishing, and I publish primarily self-help, spiritual books focused on highly sensitive neurodivergent writers, primarily. So I'm about to start my final multi-author book in a series called The Wisdom Keepers, which is written by neurodivergent people who are parents, professionals, who are health professionals, who work in IT, all sorts of different industries, bringing them all together, and we write under a theme that helps to lift the neurodivergent community and our experience of life to make life better for our, what I like to call our neurokin, which is also the term that we used for the title of our last book. So that is me in a nutshell. I like to paint, I like to sing, I like to dance, I like to go to the beach. I'm pretty interested in life and, keen to help as many people along the way as I can. That's me.
Now, when someone introduces you as a publisher, a nurse, a mentor, and a creator, as a whole framework, what part of you do you actually feel first when you sit down with somebody?
What do I feel first?
Yeah.
Oh, what a good question. I'm extremely intuitive. I pattern match with the best of them. So the first thing I am sensing is the tone of someone's heart. That is the first thing that comes to me, is whether this person is open to life, whether this person has a deep sense of connection to themselves and to the universe, and whether they've got a message, something that they're excited and passionate about, that just flows through them to me. I can feel it straight away.
Now,
Yeah, great question.
has that answer changed over the years?
No, I don't think so. I find that I see the best in everyone, regardless of what is going on for them in their external reality, regardless of how much trauma they've had or what they're struggling with at the time. I tend to be able to see the truth of a person's soul fairly quickly. Sometimes I've had to be discerning. As an autistic woman, I've learned the hard lessons of you might be able to see somebody's goodness, but you need to pay attention to their actions in life. I learned that the hard way. But I do still see the goodness in people straight away. I have learned discernment, I would say, of whether or not that person's ready for goodness in their own life. And if they're not, that's okay, but perhaps it's not for me to engage at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, before Soul Scribe Publishing had a name, what was the moment you realized stories weren't just meaningful for you? They were how you helped people heal.
Oh, look, I have been a story writer since I was in high school. I remember having teachers. I was particularly bad at most of school, so they told me. So I assumed that I was stupid back then. The education system is not set up to support those of us who think and feel differently. So I assumed that I was an idiot quite early on. However, I was particularly good at English because it was the place where I got to engage the core of who I am, the one who feels everything, the one who sees everything, the one who can pattern match and interpret energy and emotion inherently. And so I would feel everybody's stuff around me. But instead of that taking me down, within English, I was able to express it through story. I was able to lean into the characters, to lean into the emotion, and rather than being swallowed by it or knocked over by it, I was able to convert that into meaning through story. So I always got A's in English. I think I got pretty close to failing everything else. But I ended up working, my first job was with a publishing company. And that was kind of by accident, even though I don't believe in accidents. I believe in the supportive nature of the universe. So I ended up in working for a publisher, and he taught me how to write press releases and write copy for newspapers. And we would go on the road promoting these sports events that he was running as the media arm. So I learned how to craft different kinds of stories in different frameworks. So I learned how to craft a short story in the form of a press release versus, a brochure versus an advertising copy that would go onto a product. I learned very, very quickly how to apply my storytelling capacity in different modalities pretty early. But then I went off and became a nurse. I don't know how that happened. And what I found was even in nursing, I kept coming back to writing. I kept writing preventative care manuals. I was editing books on how to look after yourself with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or with autism. I was writing these helpful self-help books and editing other people's work, even within my nursing capacity, and helping people. They would come to me with trauma, with my predominant field was holistic health within nursing, and I had my own practice called My Holistic Nurse. And most of my clients would come to me and say, I'm not getting well. What's wrong? Why can't I get well? Why is this not working? Why is the medical system ignoring me, or whatever it was? And I would listen to their story, and I would help them find the passion thread through their life and help them anchor back into their authentic self and tell a new kind of story. Tell a story of goodness, tell a story of healing, to heal through writing, to unravel the story of their life and what they'd experienced through the journey of writing it down was one of the ways that I helped people to come back to health, to discard the stories that they'd borrowed from other people about who they were. Like for me, the teachers told me I was dumb. That was a story. Well, they didn't say that outright, but I believe that they were telling me I wasn't able to think, that I wasn't good enough, and I took that story on and pretended it was mine. And my clients would come to me with these similar stories of I'm broken, I can't do it, I'm no good, I don't belong, I should die, all of these sad stories that are not the truth of who they really are. And so I would help them in my nursing practice to find out who are you really, and to rewrite their story in a better way and start to heal that way. So I've always been into the story. I've always written. I've always had the ability to see somebody's truth and to help them find their own truth. And then together we write things differently. So, yeah.
Now, you lived at the intersection of science, spirituality, and storytelling for decades.
Yeah.
Was that always comfortable for you, or did it take time to trust that blend?
Oh, the blend was a very decades-long process of exploration and experimenting, and then reverse engineering what I was sensing a lot of the time. So I would see anomalies and I would find gaps in systems and I would notice what wasn't working, mostly through my own illness. I was very unwell for a very long time, trying to pretend that I was okay to the world and leaning into my mask. And over years, I discovered that the more I held up this mask of trying to fit a society that wasn't built for me, that I got sicker. And eventually I burnt out completely, full autistic burnout. I've had a couple of those in my lifetime. So through the process of noticing what was wrong, matching up patterns of what I was seeing in the world around me, matching patterns within myself, the way I was thinking, how the way I was thinking would influence the way I was feeling and the way my body would respond. I would then take all of that data and take it to science. And I would explore and I would research and I would deep dive into the connections between trauma and dialogue, our own mental critic, the dialogue that goes on in our head. And I would look at the science, the neuroscience, the nervous system science. I was a nurse, so I dived into the nursing. I was a massage therapist for a while, so I looked at the physiology. So it was decades of noticing and reverse engineering and researching until finally, and through story, right, writing it all out. And I keep a journal daily where I process what I'm experiencing in the world and put words to it. And then some of that becomes a book. But weaving all that together took a long time. It wasn't really until I had my own children that it became essential that I figure it out, because it was no longer just for me, it was for my kids, that I figure out how to have a better life, that I figure out how to be well and how to thrive, and so that I could help my family. And then from there it was, okay, now I've got this information, I know what to do. I know what works for us. I know what works for my clients. Now I can share this in books with other people. And then from there, it became, I quit nursing a couple of years ago to dedicate myself to publishing, because I realized I couldn't help enough people fast enough. So if it was just me, I could help maybe, 20 or 30 clients a week. I could help my kids. I could help my parents and my sister. But it wasn't enough for me. I needed to go bigger. So I started publishing my own books, but then I realized that also wasn't enough. So if I could help to publish other people with their wisdom and their knowledge and what they've discovered through the blend of their own story, their own experience, and the science, then I could make a bigger impact and get that ripple to go even further. So it was definitely, it's taken decades. But I feel like at 52, I've got the blend right now. Wisdom of ages.
Now
It
you've
takes
had a
a
lot. Go on.
No, that's all right. I don't know how old your listeners are, but those of you who are young, don't despair. It takes a while to get your head around life.
That's such a true statement.
Yeah.
Now you've had a long career across different worlds, business,
Mm.
nursing, holistic health. Was there a moment where those threads finally clicked together and you thought, oh, this is the work?
Yeah, it was definitely the last autistic burnout that I had, which was quite severe after COVID. Um, COVID was very challenging for me in some ways because I was in the health industry and the rules and regulations were scary. It was a lot, and I couldn't do it anymore. I burnt out completely, mostly from the trauma, mostly from being right in the middle of everybody's trauma through that whole experience, in all different ways. People were traumatized on all levels, every single person. Nobody escaped trauma of that experience. On the other hand, when we were in lockdown, everything was the most peaceful that I've ever experienced in my life.
Mhm.
There was silence in the streets. There was just me and my children and my garden, and I remember sitting on the deck one day and it was night. It was probably about 9 or 10 at night in Queensland. It's very humid, very hot. And I was out there just enjoying the nice cool breeze that had started to kick in. And it was silence. There was nothing. There were no sirens. There were no cars. There were no people yelling. It was just peaceful. And I don't think my nervous system had ever really experienced that kind of true peace.
Mhm.
And it hit me. It was quite profound. And then across the airwaves, I heard a solo clarinet playing. I don't know the name of the song. It's a marvelous night for a moon dance. Is it called Moon Dance? It's a
Not
marvelous
sure.
night for a moon dance. Yeah. So I heard that and it just wafted across the air and met me. It found me by myself. And it kind of infused into my cells, I think. And there was a shift that happened. And it was a moment where I went, okay, I need this kind of joy. I need this kind of peace. I need this kind of health. How do I get it? And then there was a couple of years of disaster with the fallout of everything kicking back into gear again after lockdown. And I went and found myself with my kids up in the country and found a little bit more peace to recover and realized that it was actually storytelling that was my passion, that was my joy, that was where I found peace and silence, and also where I could help people in a different way rather than being in the midst of everyone's trauma. I could be in the midst of helping people find their joy instead and heal through joy and heal through love and support and well-being. So it was quite a pivotal moment. It took a lot to untangle myself from my nursing business and to start my publishing business. I'd always had a copywriting business on the side as well, so that never went away. I was running my nursing practice in community, and then I had an online editing and copywriting business on the side. I've always run 2 or 3 businesses simultaneously. But this was the moment where I went, okay, I can take all of my nursing skills, all of the soft skills, all of the talents, all of the ability to hear, see, and feel people in profound ways. And I can translate that into words for myself and for others. So that was about 3 years ago now. Best thing I ever did.
I mean, what people don't really realize about COVID is when it hit, the world became quiet.
Yeah.
The air was cleaner. I mean, you had news stories around the world about how clean the oceans had become
Hmm.
because you didn't have all the pollution, you didn't have all the cars,
Yeah.
and you can walk outside and you can hear the quietness. You didn't hear cars driving by, like you said. You didn't hear
Yeah.
cars, you didn't hear sirens. It was just quiet because
Yeah.
of the fact there was that restriction of no, they wanted nobody outside. And I remember my mother even saying it was easier to get from point A to point B at that point because you didn't deal with traffic. There
That's
was no
true.
traffic anymore. It
Yeah.
was, oh, I have an appointment. Okay, let's get to it. Boom, you're there within minutes. Where now it's, oh, there's constant people on the expressway and you're trying to figure out where all these people came from.
Hmm. Yeah, it was a profound time for all of humanity and I think it shifted people's perspectives quite dramatically. But what I noticed with my autistic community, my neurokin, is that we all needed the break. We
Oh yeah.
needed it, you know? I hear that all the time from those of us who are differently wired, that it was a relief. Because everyone suddenly started doing what we've always needed to do,
It was
which
like a
was to be
reset.
still.
It was like a
Beg your
reset
pardon?
for us. It was like
Yeah,
a
reset.
reset.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean,
100%.
people don't realize when you're AUDHD like you and I are, our minds are constantly busy.
Uh-huh.
The minute everything shuts down, it's almost like you are together with your thoughts and you're able to finally sit down without any noise around you and say, okay,
Yeah.
let's work on this. Let's organize my thoughts so my mind is at a level of peace.
Absolutely, we can hear ourselves, and for sensitives, that's so rare in today's world. And this is why I like writing. And it was during that burnout that I wrote I did my first multi-author book and wrote a chapter in somebody else's multi-author book, which was beautiful because I was able to hear and feel and sense who I was, and translate that into words for my first multi-author book. I'd written my first book in 2010, so well before that. But the multi-author books I became really excited about because I was collaborating with people like me and people who also had this profound undercurrent of wisdom that really doesn't often get a chance to be heard or seen. A lot of my authors in the multi-author books are often select mute,
Mm.
nonverbal, but they have a lot to say, you know. And writing is one of those things. I'm quite an articulate person now, but in my youth, I really struggled with communication. Talking to other humans was really, really challenging. It's been through writing and through storytelling and through translating other people's wisdom into something that is of meaning in the world that has also helped me have my voice because I've got my passion now. I know what I'm about. And I really think the quiet of COVID was a big moment in that sense. And I know a lot of people are still struggling from the aftermath of that. But I think for those of you listening, if you can carve out time to go into a space as quiet as you can get it and hear your own soul
Mm.
and listen to your own heart, it will tell you what to do next. It will let you know what way to go. It's when we listen to our head and all the voices in our head, because half of them aren't even ours, right? It's all the noise of the world and all the noise of the programming that we've grown up with. If we can stop listening to our heads and start listening to our soul and our heart and listening to God, if that's what you believe in, or nature, if you don't believe in God, nature, listen to nature. It will guide you out of your struggles.
Now, talking about writing, what
Mm.
did writing give you personally before it ever became something you offered professionally to others?
Oh, I love these questions, Reed. I love them. They're so thought-provoking. It's really taking me into myself. I appreciate that. Um, Writing used to take me to other dimensional spaces. It still does, but it was my alternate realities that kept me sane as a young person. It was the place that I could go to talk to um, other beings who had a different way of life, who knew things that I didn't know yet, who were my teachers. You can call them characters, or if you're spiritual like me, you might call them guides. Um, I would go to these places where other beings existed who were kinder, who were not as harsh as the humanity around me was. And I could be safe and I could be peaceful and I could learn um, in a way that was softer for my sensitivities. I was a very gentle child, um, very, very introspective, introverted, um, delicate in ways, but also incredibly strong, And I think that's the thing with neurodivergent people. We may be sensory, we may be sensitive, we may be gentle in our natures, but boy, are we strong as well. But yeah, writing was my escape. It was the place that I could go to feel connection to something greater than myself and to beings that were benevolent and kind
Mhm.
and understood my sensitivities and my gentleness.
Now, was there ever a season where you almost didn't follow the path, while staying smaller or safer felt tempting?
Yeah, so in my 20s, in an attempt to cope with some pretty serious trauma when I was 18, I turned to drugs and alcohol
Right.
to
Mm,
numb the senses, to run away from the pain, to shove it all down, to pretend that I was okay, and to not let anybody see the agony that I was in.
mhm,
And that lasted for about a decade and a half until I had my first child, and that sort of snapped me out of that. Started to get well. I still was meditating. I still was writing. I still was doing my healing work. I still was working as a massage therapist, but I also had another job working in the entertainment industry, in oddly in script. So I was working with scripts in the entertainment industry as a freelancer. So I had two lives running. And in both lives, I was pretending to be something else, but the real me couldn't help but come through anyway. The writing was still happening, the scripts were still happening, the meditation was still happening, even though I was also numbing my pain with drugs and alcohol. So I could have gone both, I could have gone down that path, and I did go down that path quite severely for a while, but my soul's always been pretty strong. My passion for autonomy, for, and this is where I think it's not called pathological demand avoidance, it's autonomy, a desire for autonomy, that was always really strong. So I guess I followed my calling, I followed spirit, I followed God, and I found my way out. But it was a close call there for a little while. I did damage myself quite a lot. And I'm paying for that now, in my 50s. The body doesn't like me for what I did in my 20s. But, we live and learn, don't we?
Now, what pulled you back toward your voice? Was it your childhood?
Definitely, definitely spirit
Mm,
and my own sense of something greater. My knowledge that this couldn't possibly be all there is about life. That life couldn't possibly be all trouble and strife and difficulty and agony. There
mhm,
must be something more. There must be something more. And it was the guides that I would speak to, even through my 20s, in my haze of, self-destruct. Even through that time, I would hear voices that were kind in my mind. I would feel a presence around me, protecting me and guiding me and helping me through. And so I kind of had this inherent sense that there was more. And so, and that was the thing that kept me alive from a couple of suicide, moments where I was like, I'm done.
mhm.
Um, and this presence was there always saying, you're not done. There's more to do here. You've got something to give. You've got somewhere to be that's not here. And
Mm.
so, in spite of my head, I followed my heart.
All right. Now, you work with a lot of highly sensitive professionals and change makers. Why do you think that people with the deepest insight often hesitate the most to be seen?
Say that again. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
You work with a lot of highly sensitive professionals and change makers. Why do you think the people with the deepest insight often hesitate the most to be seen?
Right. Yeah. Great question. This comes up a lot with my multi-author books. Um, it comes down to fear and a lack of belief in worth, self-worth. So the fear of being judged, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the fear of saying the right thing and then being judged. Because I think inherently we know the truth. Inherently, we do know, we have the wisdom. But it's that fear of judgment, I feel, is the biggest thing. Being too visible, and standing out from the crowd, especially neurodivergent people, because we've spent our whole life trying to be what everybody else thinks we should be, to try to fit in, to try to blend in, to try not to stand out too much, because standing out feels inherently dangerous. So when
Oh,
you go to write, you're exposing yourself, and that is scary. And this is why I love my authors so much, because they are brave. A writer is a brave, courageous person. it's one thing to write, but then to actually publish is a big deal, because people are going to read you. People are going to see your truth, your heart, your soul, and that can be confronting. So the fear of visibility, and being vulnerable to judgment is the biggest thing. And then the other thing is what I have to say really valuable? Is it really worth it? So people's self-worth gets in the way a lot. Do I really have something valuable to share with the world? My statement to them is absolutely 100%, always, because our story has inherent wisdom. Our journey through life is valuable. As a human, we have value. And I think if you can identify what that value is and then share it with others, you have just succeeded in being a contributing member to a better reality, a better society. So
Now,
definitely, yeah, those two things, worth and judgment.
now, would you say imposter syndrome would possibly sit there in between the
Yeah,
two
that
of them?
comes into the self-worth thing. Yeah. So, if we don't think we're worthy, um, we might, and I have imposter syndrome. Most of us do, to
Mhm.
some degree. I've had to fight through it. My first book, I wrote my first chapter in a multi-author book. I wrote this story and it was the truth. It was my real self. It wasn't the mask. And I got to the end of it and I spoke to my publisher. I'm like, I have to pull out. I can't do it. This is too much. Um, who am I to say these things? Who am I to tell people what I think, what I feel in the world is true? And she told me, who are you to not stand up and bring your value to the world? Because if you don't do it, who else is
Yeah.
going to? So I think everyone has that imposter syndrome, but the difference is the people who go forward and publish anyway, or write and publish anyway, are the ones that trust the parts of themselves that know better, right? Imposter syndrome is only a collection of stories that other people have told us about ourselves.
Mhm.
That's what it is. So if you can find the little crack in that armor and let the light through, everyone has something valuable to say. But yeah, definitely it's a self-worth issue, and our layers of um, stories that other people have told us is the imposter. We are not the imposter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what's one belief about writing or publishing you find yourself gently unlearning with your authors again and again?
Unlearning. Unlearning ego. That actually I don't have all the answers. Um, and also to remember that none of us have all the answers. We can only speak through our own lens, through our own experience. And so the thing that I constantly remind myself is the author's voice is inherently valuable. And it's important for me to preserve. It is my honor and my desire to preserve the voice of the authentic author. I can help sculpt, I can help guide, I can help suggest ways to bring that voice out, but to remember that it is their story, their book, their decision. I am the guide and the supporter and the scaffolding to help them bring their vision to life. I think as young people, we think we know everything. And sometimes even, and I do note this with autism as well, we have this very black and white view of the world. And so one of my biggest developments, my biggest growing opportunities has been to allow grey area, to let the grey area be there. And I don't have to be right. I don't have to be right. That's been massive, massive. I'm a guide to people to find their best selves and to tell that story. And that is my role, and that is my joy, and that is my honor. Yeah.
Now, when someone finally shares their story publicly, What changes first? Their confidence, their relationship, or their sense of identity?
I don't think you can separate them. They do come in stages, though. The identity changes as they write, where they start to realize that they can, that they will, that this is happening. So the identity piece, when people give themselves permission to tell their story, that in itself is a shift of identity. When they start to own this thing where I am writing. First, it's I am writing, and then it becomes I am a writer. That's an identity shift. Their relationship to themselves changes, their relationship to the people around them changes at that point, and confidence grows at each layer and level of the process until we get to publishing. And then there's a regression, often. Where people freak out, like I said, that vulnerability kicks in and we start to freak out once our book's out in the world. We're like, no, take it back. But then when you push through that, there's a whole nother expansion of confidence that comes after that, where you're like, hey, I'm not just a writer, I'm an author. And I'm going to own that and I'm going to live that and I'm going to move through the world as that. And then we start to notice that that confidence attracts different quality people to our lives, when we tell our truth, when we tell our story. Confidence attracts better quality experiences in relationship. So yeah, they're all intertwined.
Now, the name Wisdom Keepers carries a lot of weight.
Yes.
Who are we not listening to enough as a culture right now?
We're not listening to the quiet ones. We're not listening to the ones who have, as I said, a lot to say, but no channels to say it. I'm thinking of, the great work of the telepathy tapes, podcast as well. There is inherent wisdom in all humans, I believe. But it is the quiet ones who observe the world and notice the subtleties that I think we could be listening to more. And that brings me to children, because every child, if given an opportunity and the right environment to thrive in, has a lot to say and a lot of truth before they get squashed by the education system or before they get slapped around a bit by an abusive environment that they grow up in. Children come in inherently wise. I'm hoping next year to actually create a multi-author book for young people between the age of well, it depends on the person, and the capacity. But I've got a couple of writers who are 12 at the moment, and give them another year, and I think they'll be ready. So young people up to about the age of 18, I think, have powerful things to say, a lot of wisdom, and they can see a lot about what needs to change in the world. But our neurokin, we see patterns, we see gaps, we feel the discord of the world, and when we listen to ourselves, inherently know how to fix it. And that's where the Wisdom Keepers came from. The name was actually it dropped in from God. And I said, well, I don't know what that is. What's the Wisdom Keepers? And then the guidance was, well, this is what you're going to do next. You're going to do this multi-author book. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do it. I don't know how to do that yet, but, teach me, show me. So yeah, I think we as humans, if we listen to our heart and soul, we all have wisdom. But there are those of us a little bit more primed with different kind of wiring to see things that other people can't see.
Now, speaking of multi-author books,
Yeah.
what surprised you the most when you began curating multi-author books instead of solo stories?
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love the way the book shapes itself. It's almost like I don't have to do anything. I mean, I do. I mentor the writers and I help with their skills development, and we bust some of these imposter syndrome and the limiting beliefs and the fears. We go through all of that. We move through those things. But when I get to the point of editing all of the chapters, the authors don't read each other's work at all until the book is compiled, until it's together. So we all write to a theme, but nobody knows what each other is writing. So they get that surprise. But for me, it's always that there's a micro and a macro. Each micro short story, each chapter has an arc, it has a flow, it has a shape, it has wisdom threading through it. And then when I go to put the chapters together as one whole book, there's a natural arc that moves through the whole book as well. It's like the energetics of the book becomes its own life.
Mm.
It takes on its own form like a human would, a new baby. It has constructed itself organically. And it's always so, so exciting to see how everybody's chapter sort of fits and makes sense. And the flow is there, even though nobody's got any idea what the other person is writing about. That is the best moment. It's so fun, and
Now,
always surprising.
now, have you ever watched an author step into the leadership in the way that they didn't even realize they were ready for?
Always. I remember one particular writer in The Wisdom Keepers #1, which was called Hope, Healing, and Hidden Truths of Neurodivergence. That book, I had a beautiful client that I was actually mentoring independently. Uh, I'm a holistic counselor as well. So we were doing some counseling work and I knew she was a writer. So I invited her to participate in the first book. She was pretty much nonverbal. Well, no, in the group space, she was absolutely nonverbal. She would have no photo, no video, the black screen. Her name was changed. So it wasn't even her original name on the Zoom. And she didn't speak at all. She didn't participate in the chat. She would just observe and be there. And then I would talk to her afterwards about what she'd experienced and mentor her through from there. We went through this 12-month process of the first multi-author book, and gradually over time, as she wrote her story, which was so shocking, some of the things that she'd been through, so shocking. But we were looking for the gold in her story, the wisdom, the inherent understanding that came from those tragedies. And as she uncovered that and started writing, her confidence grew. She started showing up. Her name changed first on the Zoom to her actual name. Then her photo went up. Then she would put the comment in the chat. This is over the course of 12 months. By the time we got to our group Meet the Author and the book launch out on social media, she had gained so much self-leadership that she was then able to show up on camera, speak using her own voice with, relative confidence, with her face out there, and was able to come forward and help guide people who have potentially experienced the horrors that she has experienced in her life, and to show people that no matter how terrible it has been, you can get better, you can show up, you can heal in stages and levels. And I am so proud of her. We still work together on a one-on-one basis, and she is a brilliant human, and she's still healing and growing and expanding and leading others who, she had a hospital visit at the start of 2025. And instead of going in there this time as a broken human, subject to all the things that the doctors and nurses were going to do to her without any control, she went in there and she advocated for herself, and she took her book and she's like, hey, read this. This is what my life has been like. This is how we can help other people in this ward. Please read our book. So, it changed things. And her psychologist was like, this is amazing. I need to give this to everyone else. And so the entire hospital ward ended up reading that book and reading her experience of how the medical system needs to change based on her story. So powerful things can happen when you tell your story.
Now, what did that look like from your side?
Oh, I was just beside myself with pride. For me, it's the joy in watching somebody unfurl into their brilliance and share their truth, share who they are, rather than the mask, that's inherently worthwhile for me. But that's why I wanted to write these books and bring these books together, was because I know the power that one person can have. But when you bring together 10 people in one book, you've got exponential change that can happen in systems and structures and communities and, even workplaces or politics. It only takes one person to tell their story. But when we all get together and share and we act as a unit, we can make that change happen a lot faster in a lot more powerful ways. So my next book, The Wisdom Keepers, is called Unity. And it is literally about how can we instruct those people who manage workplaces and are leaders in community and are making policies and the change makers within big systems and structures, to inform them of how we see things can be better. This is the direction of the next Wisdom Keepers.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the Me Map. If you had to
Cool.
explain the Me Map to someone who's exhausted by self-help language, how would you describe it?
In really short terms, it's the pathway back to who you've always been. It is a subjective map. All of the constructs out there, in terms of health, recovery, they're all objective. They're all, data-based. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. That gets us where we need to go, right? But it's very linear. And in my experience, it doesn't account for the dynamic process of growth, of recovering who you are. You can do the what do you need to change? Well, I need to take medicines, or I need to exercise, or I need to change my diet. But there's very few models that allow the essence of a person to come forward and for the soul of a person to guide themselves in partnership with health professionals, in partnership with teachers. We need to understand, and the Me Map is the pathway to understanding that we know what we need if we would only listen. So it's a dynamic model that embraces linear approach to healing, but also that spiral growth that happens, that's a little bit more fluid, and a lot more intuitive.
Right. Now, what do people usually discover about themselves that they weren't expecting when they start working with the Me Map?
That they know the answer, that they know what they need, that if they can trust that, things will get better. Trust is a big deal, right? Trust takes time, and we have to learn to trust ourselves before we can even trust others. So that's probably the first thing. It's realizing that they do know what they need. And then the next step is I'm going to trust that, and I'm going to take actions in alignment with what I know, rather than listening to what other people are telling me to do, which feels wrong in myself. That's probably the biggest thing. And also that it doesn't have to be a straight line. Healing doesn't have to be a straight line. It never is. Yeah.
Now, you talk about energy mastery, not as something abstract, but practical. What's one small shift that tends to create the biggest ripple for people?
Look, I know it sounds like I'm saying the same thing over and over, but that's because it's true. The biggest shift that somebody can make in the smallest possible way is to practice self-awareness and self-listening. Same thing, sort of, but depending on the way that you learn. So some people learn self-awareness through sensing energy move in their bodies. The subtleties, like for example, as a neurodivergent person, I can sense a very subtle shift in my kidney function. But if I'm ignoring that because I'm too busy, or I'm listening to what the doctor said, or, and you should listen to your doctors, but only after you've listened to yourself first, right? Listen deeply to your body, listen deeply to your heart, your soul, you're observing your mind. From that place of self-discovery. Because when you can listen to those subtleties and notice what's there, you can ask yourself for the answer. So when I notice a subtle shift in my kidney function, instead of rushing to the doctor and going, there's something wrong with me, I'll listen to my kidneys, and my kidneys will tell me what I need. Oh, Christy, you haven't had water in 4 hours. Oh, right. That's what that is. So I'll hear that answer and I'll go and drink water. If the problem persists, then I will go and seek professional advice, right? So I'm not suggesting people stop their meds or don't see the doctor or anything like that, but I'm just saying when you have developed self-awareness, it takes away a lot of fear and you can become empowered to take control of your own life, and be in the driver's seat of your own life rather than being reactive to what everybody else is pushing in on you. So it gives you autonomy. It gives you confidence to stand on your own 2 feet. Yeah.
Now I want to talk a little bit about you. You're raising AuDHD teenagers while doing some deeply driven work. How has motherhood reshaped the way you define success?
Oh, my goodness. Motherhood changed everything. Everything. I didn't realize how far away from myself I had gotten until my children arrived. I suspected, through meditations, I would, escape and feel into other things. And, I did have those voices guiding me. But in the real 3D world, I was a total mess. And so that was the moment where I realized the small things that I had been doing to try to heal myself, like stopping smoking and pulling back on the drinking and, getting a better job and, trying, but it was so hard. Life was so hard. Every step that I took was effort, 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 pain, pain, pain up until that point. And then I had a reason that was bigger than me. To get excuse my French, I'm an Australian, so we swear a lot. So listeners, put your fingers in your ears if you don't like swearing. I had to get my shit together really quickly because I realized that I did not want to bring my children into the disaster that I was. So that was the first thing. Motherhood, though, and lucky I had my nursing degree by the time my kids, I was still studying when I fell pregnant, and then I finished my degree when my children were 2 and 3 years old. Lucky though, because I didn't know that we were autistic ADHD, but my children had big issues with their health from immediately. Fortunately, I was able to reverse engineer and research what was going on. And that was how we discovered our neurodivergence, was not because the doctors knew what was happening with us, but because I researched it and I figured it out myself. And then I took all of that data and information to the doctors and said, here's what's going on. This is what I think is happening. Not what's wrong, because there's nothing wrong with us as autistic people. There's nothing wrong with us. We are disabled by a society that doesn't understand how to support us. We have challenges because the system doesn't know what to do or how to work with us. So, I didn't go to the doctor and say, there's something wrong with my children. I went to the doctor and I said, this is what we're experiencing. Look at the research. So they guided every step of my journey from then. I learnt so much from my children. I learnt how to be a calm person. I learnt how to be a real person, because when I wasn't being real, my children would have meltdowns. When I was in burnout and when I was having a meltdown, my children's meltdowns would be bigger. So my distress was contributing to my children's distress. So I had to change quickly. And that, as we know, is not fun for a neurodivergent person. But I have experienced more personal growth in the almost 2 decades now that my children have been alive. I've experienced more personal growth in that first 10 years than I think I had my entire life up until that point. Yeah, they saved me.
Now, what have your kids taught you about authenticity that no professional training ever could?
That have taught me about what, sorry?
Being authentic.
Authenticity. Yeah. Everything. Everything. Because they sense everything. You cannot get away with anything with an autistic child. They are reading every nuance. They are reading the energetics. They are reading it through their skin, through their proprioceptive, in inputs. They're reading the ripple in the breath that you breathe. They're so refined in their nervous systems, they are picking up on everything. So I had to become my true self because when I wasn't, my children suffered. When I was masking, they couldn't feel me, so they would have meltdowns.
Mm.
When I was too hyper focused on my work, because that was my thing, right? All of my energy, they would realize that I had disconnected from them. The attachment between us disappeared, so they would have meltdowns. So I had to recalibrate my identity back to who I really am so that my children could heal as well. I also had to really reverse engineer my trauma and heal my trauma. So actively go to clinical hypnotherapists, actively go to matrix re-imprinting practitioners or EFT tapping practitioners, RTT. I did a lot of personal healing so that I could uncover my true self. And communication with us is really big as well. So I learned to communicate in a clear, authentic, true way from my children because they won't tolerate anything less than pure truth. It's got to be
Now,
fair.
now, on the days when everything feels noisy, business, creativity, parenting, how do you come back to center? Because I know for a lot of us, it's hard.
Yeah, it is really hard. I have a huge collection of tools that I used to teach people. People can still find them on one of my websites. I don't know if you're putting the link, but below there are self-paced training courses for people to learn what I know through my nursing practices, which was around 13 years of experience in nursing, but also through massage therapy, through my healing arts. I've gathered a lot of tools. But the one that I come back to all of the time is breathing. I have a lot of different breathing techniques. None of them are complicated, but they make all the world in the difference, all the difference in the world. There is one that I learned called heart breathing, which I do teach through one of those courses, but you can also get it through other means, through the Heart Math Institute. They teach heart breathing as well. That's probably the most powerful thing that I return to over and over and over. And the second thing is grounding. I have PEMF grounding mats. I have far and near infrared light therapy devices. I have devices, there's one called an ENAR, ENAR, which helps to realign the frequencies of the nervous system. So I have tools like devices, but the primary one is the realization that we are our best device. Humans have what we need inside ourselves. We have breath. We have awareness. We have the ability to go outside and take off our shoes and put our feet on the ground. You don't have to have money for that. They're the two natural things that I use. Is I talk to the birds all the time. My kids call me the crazy bird lady. I have a flock of 32, I counted them, of course, 32 magpies. In Australia, we have these crazy birds. They're very, very smart. They're about as smart as what I think you have ravens over there. So they're pretty clever. So I hang out with my birds and I put my feet on the ground and I breathe the air, basics.
Now, let's talk a little bit about creativity and play. You paint mini oceanscapes, sing, dance, play. How important is play to staying connected to your voice?
100% important. It's 100% important. We need to experience all that life has to offer, or we slowly die, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're not expanding into creativity, that's where source lives. That's where vitality lives. That's where energy is. When we're tuned into our real self, our authentic self, we do naturally desire to play. We do naturally find joy in experiencing all of what life has to offer. So for me, I go to the ocean and I take lots of photos. I come back and I paint those. I don't have a lot of time because I'm a pretty busy lady, but I paint these little tiny landscape canvases. But I sing with a choir, and that's the way that I spark creativity in me. So if I don't have that creative flow, how am I going to write my stories? You know, it's going to be
Mhm.
tough. I'd be writing from my head, not my heart, and that's not as authentic as I would like it to be. So yeah, it's essential.
Now, do you think people underestimate how creativity is actually a survival skill?
Ooh, love that. It's definitely particularly in the policymakers and the government, it really isn't given the weight I believe that it needs to be given in terms of um essential for health. It's essential for health. We're not mental beings. We're sensory beings.
Hmm.
Creativity brings all of us to the party. Our mind, our heart, our body, our soul, our senses, it brings all of it um, like nothing else can. So I think there needs to be a lot more funding for the arts, all arts, whichever you tend to be leaning into. I like, my job is writing because that's my favorite. But all the other things that I do as well, because I'm a multi-dimensional person. And as neurodivergent people, we are multi-dimensional. We've been caged, we've been boxed by society, we've been relegated to the back blocks because we're sensory, but we're multi-dimensional in nature.
Now, when someone finishes one of your books or programs and quietly thinks, I finally feel like myself, what does that mean to you?
It's everything. It means I have served humanity with my whole heart, and that's why I'm here. So my purpose on earth has been fulfilled. Every time one of those people does that. And that's like our books as well. If only one person ever read our book and got something out of one of them that changed them, that made things better a little bit, then we've done our job. So yeah, it's the greatest thing in the world. It's almost like having another child when one of my students succeeds like that. It's like, yay, you get to go out into the world and you get to spread your joy and ripples of goodness in the world. And that's better for everybody. It only takes one person to heal themselves and be their true, authentic self to create massive change in community. And that's how we change the world, one person at a time.
Now, if you zoom out and look at your life's work so far, what do you hope people feel, not think, when they encounter your work?
I hope they feel lighter. I hope they feel through whatever it is that I've done, um, that they feel hopeful, that life doesn't have to be suffering, that life can be joyful, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And believe me, I've seen the dark. I've been well into the dark side. I sometimes think people see me now and they go, "Oh, she's had it so easy." No, I haven't. I really haven't. I've had some really freaking awful experiences in my life. I have experienced really bad health. I've experienced really bad mental health. I've had extreme traumas. Nobody should have to go through what I've been through. Nobody should have to go what any of us have been through. But if I can stand here and share my work in whatever form that takes, whether it's a painting or a book or a course, and somebody feels me and the lightness that I have now, that brings possibility, that it opens something in them. And they go, maybe something else is possible for me as well. Yeah.
Now, in closing, for someone listening right now who knows they're carrying a story but feels unsure if it matters, what would you want them to hear?
I want them to know you absolutely matter and your story matters and your story can change lives, no matter what has happened. And there's always gold inside the hard and heavy stuff, always. It's just a case of unpacking it the right way so that you can find the gold.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and Soul Scribe online?
So, because I am multifaceted, I have a link tree because that if everyone goes to Linktree, then they can shoot off to what interests them, right? So, on Linktree, it's Linktree / Christy Lee Rackham. So I don't know how to LINKTR. Is it .ee / Christy Lee
I'm not
Rackham?
100% sure.
We'll have to write it down.
I'll put it down in the description down below, everybody.
Wonderful, because I can never remember it. I see it in my head, but then the words don't come out when I try to read it from my head. So that's the best place to go. You can also, if you are a writer and you want mentorship and publishing elements like editing, proofing, typesetting, print ready publications, go to soulscribegroup.com as well. But yeah, the link tree is the best place. I have health professionals as well who train in the Mee Map. So there's a training program for any health professionals who might be listening and want a holistic approach to helping their neurodivergent clients, because we're out of the box people, you know? Straight lines are not going to work for autistic ADHD people.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles, and that's Christy Lee Rackham. And I want to remind everybody, you're never alone. See you in the next one. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much, Reed. It's been great.